Good. Good morning. We are tasting Iberia-ish because we're finishing not on the peninsula of the Iberian Peninsula today. That's just the way my mind works. We're going to get started with the Morgado de Quintao. Can somebody help me pour?
Oh yeah, pass it on. We'll pass it around.
Cool. So we are going to start in the Algarve, and if I were as savvy as Keith is, I would have maps for up here for everybody to look at, but I don't. So I have my laptop. Sorry, guys. Algarve is the southernmost portion of Portugal. It is facing Africa. It is the kind of the resort coast of Portugal. During COVID, more Portuguese visited this region than any other region. It is incredible, like cliffs going into the ocean, hidden little alcovey sandy beaches, just incredible. The Morgado is 100% Negro Mole, and that's the unique indigenous grape there. This wine is the grapes are organically grown. Minimal, this is cool kid wine. So no sulfur until bottling. It's served with a slight chill. I will email everybody to hopefully have everybody in LA ready for that. It's just this awesome summer crunchy yumminess, which I thought would be a fun way to start a tasting off with. It's a little on the expensive side, but it's cool kid wine. Cool kids spend a little bit more money. Brilliant labels. The winemaker here is Joana Mancita, and her brother are kind of the rock star winemakers of the peninsula.
Really delicious.
Yeah.
Cool.
For summer,
Yeah.
like for barbecue outdoors.
Totally. I mean, and they have this amazing winery, and they have this like backyard patio place with a 2,000-year-old like olive tree back there where you just sit under and just eat, and it's wonderful. All right, so then we're going to Alentejo, Teixo, for all my Portuguese-speaking friends. Esperau is one of the big producers there. They have now gone completely into organic. So this is the first vintage where this wine hits 100% organic certification. Alentejo's this Teixo is a very fun place because it's essentially the California of Portugal. So up until when when Portugal joined the EU, all this money came flooding in. Everybody started to like invest in this region, but there wasn't a huge history of unique varietals to be planted. Yes, there's Portuguese varietals, but they're like, we can do whatever we want to do, like California. So they have Syrah, they have Cabernet, they plant Albarino there, they plant Sauvignon Blanc there, and it's warm, okay, continental maritime. They say they get some coastal influence, but they're pretty far interior. They have some elevation there, so it kind of contributes to the freshness. But this wine, just delicious. Cab, Tempranillo, Touriga Nacional, Alicante Boucher, Syrah, and Trincadera, and a little Touriga Franca as well. It has everything. I mean, it's like, we're going to throw everything in, and it works.
And
I mean,
yeah, you get that in the layers of flavors too. There's like a lot going on there.
And reasonably priced. And I think it hits enough old world and new world at the same time, so there's a huge customer base for this.
Yeah.
All right, and now we'll do a quick rinse. with the next wine, which Vino Verde, and everybody knows Vino Verde. The northernmost appellation in Portugal. It borders Rías Baixas in Spain, and this is the green corner of Iberia. So lots of rain. So the average rainfall in this region is, 700 to 900 millimeters. It's wet. It's green. What is super cool is most of the farming historically is small farmers, just like in Rías Baixas. And the traditional farming here is pergola. So they have the vines growing up here, so you have room on the ground to grow your vegetables. So, I mean, it's really like they're out there in this isolated mountainous area making a living. And then the cool thing that I found out is the region borders the biggest national park in Portugal and Spain. And one of the pests that they have to deal with are wild horses. So wild horses will come in and eat grapes from vineyards in some of these regions. So it's just...
Actually, I would love to see. I just want to see horses and grapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
what's it look like?
so like, oh, we had to chase the horses out. I have been looking for a Quinta Aveleda alternative or a crab wine alternative forever. This is my attempt to attack the king of Vino Verde.
I've stopped it where the crab line was, so.
Thank you. Has Albarino in it. Albarino, so we have a little bit more body. We have acid. Loureiro is the king of the region. And Loureiro would be Portuguese for laurel, and it kind of contributes some of that herbal floral elements that you get from traditional Vino Verdes, and Trechador gives it a little alcohol and, again, aromatics. So it's summertime. I mean, it's by the pool, on a boat, in a park, wherever you want to be. This is cheap and fun.
At your kid's baseball game.
For sure. Make sure you have your red cups out so nobody knows what you're doing and everybody's fine.
That's coming at Aunt Carla's house next time I'm over there.
So then I'm transitioning right up to Rías Baixas. So we're going just across the Minho River. So the northern border of Portugal is the Minho River. Valteia has vineyards that overlook the river. So this is from the Cantado de Teia subappellation in Rías Baixas. The fanciest, largest one is the Val de Salnes, which is where all the big guys come from. And that's coastal. Last time I was talking about the fjords and how much I love the idea of those. This is more interior. There's no coastal influence directly, but you still get this really interesting minerality stoniness to it. And I always like to say this is riverstone stoniness versus saltiness that you get from other Albarinos grown on the coast. And it also has a little bit more body. That's again function. It's not as coastal. It is warmer. This is one of our DIs. This is a kick butt little wine that we sell.
Is this in stainless steel or is it
Stainless.
digital?
Yeah. All right. Next is the Douro River Valley, and I have just come back from Portugal. And up until this point, I thought the most beautiful wine region in the world was Tuscany. And the Douro in spring it has to be the most stunning place in the world. I mean, any photograph you see of this region does not do it justice. Just full stop. amazing. So Wine and Soul is a relatively new project. A group of winemakers, husband and wife. The wife is a winemaker from Lisboa region, and her husband, like deep family tradition in the Douro Valley. So the Guru is named after one of their old dogs. It is, all their wines are named after dogs, except for the next wine, which is named after like the vineyard, which is the vineyard for over 100 years. The grapes here are grown on granite. The Douro Valley is granite and schist. Granite's for white grapes, schist for red grapes. This is grown in the cooler, the Baixo Corgo, more coastal. It's actually closer to Vinho Verde. It is a huge mishmash of grapes, just like port always is. But the grapes here are the grapes that go into white port. So this is always fun. It's dry wines from the Douro always give you insight into the sweet wines of the Douro. And so this is Vino Sino, Rabigato, Goveo, which is Godello in Spain. So we got some crossover there. And Codega de Lorino. We know Goveo.
Are we all grown in one vineyard together, or
It's
one vineyard, mixed vineyard together?
It's mixed vineyards, and when they're replanting, they're planting in blocks.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just easier to harvest that way, and they also it's all that way now in the Douro. Like we can plant these blocks, and they'll all the grapes here will harvest 2 weeks before the grapes on this block.
Okay.
And on this block, it just makes more sense.
But traditionally, it was more like a field
It
blend
was total
situation?
field blend.
Okay.
But like the variance in harvest times for red grapes can be 6 weeks.
Wow.
So you could be getting unbelievably green grapes going into unbelievably ripe grapes at the same time. So it makes more sense to break it up this way.
For sure.
Sees a little bit of new oak, like less than 10%. The grapes are foot trodden. They have granite lagaras. So they go in, they stomp on them, they press them, it's gone. Did we like this? I love this one.
Yeah.
I don't taste the oak at all.
Yeah,
No.
it's more
It's
for
really good.
texture.
Yeah, which it does have that nice roundness.
And interesting Douro minerality to it.
How
It's
long does
just
it take him to do it by feet? That's a long time.
so for making port, that's an awful job.
Hours of
no,
protein.
so it's like 72 hours of stomping. So you bring the grapes in and you do like 10-hour shifts with the garas are probably as wide as this table, and you just like link up your shoulders and you just stomp, moving slowly forward and back for hours and hours and hours. And you can see why they made these robot stompers.
Absolutely.
And those are totally cool. I mean, we have robots making wine. Where else in the world do you have robots making wine? Love it.
Makes sense why it's a little more pricey, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's dramatically we undercharge for the amount of effort that goes into making that wine. Just the labor involved in those are ridiculous. So Maniola is the name of the vineyard, and what is cool about this is a vineyard grown in Cima Corgo, in a river valley of the Cima Corgo. So there's the Douro, and there's all these different rivers that feed into the Douro. There's the Pinau River Valley, which is where all the big guys are. So you think of the Douro, but really Pinau is the center of where Graham's, Taylor's, Quinta de Noval, Ramos Pinto has vines there. Churchill has some vines there. So I mean, this is where everybody is. This is a vineyard site that was originally planted for grapes destined for tawny ports. And I'm still trying to figure out and find a resource in English because my Portuguese is awful. Like, the thought process behind this. But it's crazy being there. You see those terraced vineyards, but they have all this forest around them. So you think Douro and you think lines and lines of terraced vineyards, but they have all these plots of forest, and it helps cool down the vineyards. It's like you have a whole bunch of vegetation, it retains more water, it humidifies everything. You're like, oh, this is just a super cool idea. They never talk about this. This is Touriga Nacional, Tinta Francesca, Touriga Franca, and Tempranillo. Cool. I love this whole wine. It's just this elegant expression of the Douro. Okay. And then we're gonna do a rinse with some rosé, and we're gonna work with that. Yeah, this is Douro minerality. It's just nice. We tasted the cool natty version of this last time, and now we're tasting the party-sized, more conventional rosé. Azul Igranza is in Navarra, and Navarra is part of the Basque portion of northern Spain. It's just on the outside of Rioja. What is awesome about this, they're basically growing these grapes in a national forest. You can go to their website and you see these just like grapes in a field with all these weeds around it. Total like Swartland like thing. Mostly Grenache with a little bit of Tempranillo in there. And it's that bigger style rosé from Spain. And this is just, I have a preference for this bigger style of rosé. I want rosé with a little bit of oomph. I want it to have a little bit more expressive fruit. We're good? We're good. And good acid. And it's just more substantial but fresh.
Mm-hmm.
We can stack it next to the Etz liters.
Hey, why not? You got a party, you gotta have little bottles, you know?
Organically grown, so if that's important, calcareous soils and concrete tanks.
I kind of don't want to go to work now after drinking it. It's just good party.
Yep. Let's go to the water park.
Yeah.
Seriously. All right, so the next wine is one of our new direct import Riojas. Senda de Haro is a project for the winemaker of the Honorio Rubio white wines that we bring in. So what's fun about this for me is when we think of Rioja, we think of the Ebro River, we think of things on the northern side of the Ebro River right there, and they are located in a village called Cordovan, and it's in the same neighborhood as Badaran, where the Pedro Martinez Alsanco wines come from. So this is the southern half of the Rioja appellation, and we're up against the Sierra de la Demanda mountains. And one of the big distinctions between the kind of the north side and the south side, these mountains are higher. They stay covered in snow longer than the Cantabria Mountains. And the soils here are volcanic clay versus calcareous clay when we're on the northern side. So, and the other fun thing is this is Rioja, this is rosé country. This is historically ground zero for Rioja rosé. They have festivals here focusing specifically on this, but this new project is done in cooperation with Contino's ex-winemaker. So we have old school greatness coming out here playing with moderately old vines, so 40-ish year old vines, We're looking mostly Tempranillo with a little bit of Garnacha. 16 months in American oak.
Doesn't really show it.
No.
Just fresh.
Yeah, and like old oak, I think there's a lot more use towards older oak that's not gonna put as much of an imprint on the wine.
So you're not feeling your vanilla.
Yeah. Cool. And then we're gonna go to classic direct import. It's been a minute since Poyas has been in the house, but they're back. We have the Reserva. We're tasting the Grand Reserva today. I have put the white and the Crianza on my tasting PO to be opened when there's time for everybody else to taste, but not at this time, as a function of getting us through this tasting faster. It's like, we will taste them, yes, but Kirk talks too much, I've been told. We'll excise some wines, but we will taste them. Poyas is in Abalos, which is Rioja Alta, and Rioja Alta is a super fun place, and I will send an image to LA guys, sorry. Because if you look at a map of Rioja, and if we want, we could come over here. Oops, maybe not. And I just closed it. Never mind. Rioja Alavesa is closest to the Cantabrian Mountains. And you look at it, and it looks like these two buck teeth sticking into Rioja Alta. And Alavesa is a political boundary. So this is the Basque-controlled portion of Rioja. The soils aren't different there, but it's the Basque-controlled thing. And like, I always come back to Alavesa because there is a very distinctive clay limestone soil when you head towards the mountains there that you feel in those wines. And those are the wines where I kind of felt the terroir and like, okay, I can taste these wines and go, yes, they come from this area. This comes from that area, but it comes from the Spanish-controlled portions. This is the gap in the tooth. So if you were to look there, and the next wine is really fun because Lesmos is, the bulk of their vines are in the Alta Gap and in Alavesa. But it's these clay limestone soils which define the style, and it's the access to the mountains which keeps them a little bit fresher. Poyas is 95% Tempranillo. It's almost all estate grown, mix of French and American oak.
Needs to be decanted, it's showing quite a bit of an advanced age character.
Oh, you already tasted that?
Yeah.
No. We'll go this way.
Yeah, closer.
Next is Lesmos. LaGuardia. We're dealing with Alavesa here. But what's really fun about these wines, and I don't know if I wasn't paying attention when Joe was hosting these tastings. Sorry, Joe. I didn't realize that it's Tempranillo Carignan, so Tempranillo Manzuelo, and the Manzuelo for this wine comes from the Oriental. So they have a 15-hectare vineyard, all planted to Carignan in what was formerly known as Rioja Baja. And I think that could be the secret sauce of their wines. There is this just freshness, no matter how old they are, and there's this interesting kind of dark fruit character, which I just love, and it's kind of unique to Lesmos. And I'm wondering if that's the secret sauce there. And this is the last that we will see of the 10. I don't know what the next vintage is that will come in after this, but I was told this is it. And then we're moving on to the next. All old oak. What else do I have?
How much did we get?
400-ish bottles. Yeah, it will run until the holidays, and then we'll go, why don't we have that? But it's here now. We can stock up. We can love it. Next in line, we're doing great. Bosconia. So Lopez de Heredia, the one, the only old school. Bosconia is a single vineyard wine. All of their wines are single vineyard wines. But Bosconia is the smallest of their vineyards. It is planted mostly to Tempranillo. And there's more Tempranillo in this wine than in the Tondonia. Which is weird because it's in a Burgundy bottle versus a Bordeaux bottle. I don't understand that, but whatever. This has always been their more robust bottling. 5 years in old American oak barrels, just hanging out in the religious artifact that is Tondonia. If I were to ask for reviews from people, this would be one of the ones I would ask reviews for. We do have a campaign coming up on this one shortly. But yeah, I mean, any chance we get to taste Lopez, we kind of just have to taste Lopez. That's just it's the way the world is, and I'm happy to continue with that. Yeah, but a little more rustic than Tondonia. I'm doing lots of ums. I'm not a public speaker.
So I already took one home and read.
Yeah, we have a decent margin on it. This one came in through not normal channels, so yay for us. And then the next wine, we'll let everybody sit there and enjoy that, is Remoluri, and I will just talk about Remoluri while we're waiting for that to go around and everybody's enjoying the wine. It was a little chunky, so you might want to decant I'll email about that. Remoluri is one of the big old school Rioja Alavesa producers, and they have like my all-time favorite, and you've probably heard it a million times from me, but it's my favorite one of my favorite Rioja stories. Tomo Rodriguez, his family owns this estate. In the late 70s, he goes to Bordeaux to learn how to make wine. He makes friends. He's drinking Petrus. He's drinking first growth wines. He's living the life. And he comes back to his dad, and he's like, Dad, I want to make great wines from our estate. And his dad's all, no. We're going to make a lot of good wine. We're not going to make a small amount of great wine. And Tomo was like, I can't live with that. He left. He then went around the peninsula selling barrels. He started his own company. He made a fortune. He makes all these cool, small regional wines working with other producers. He has since come back to Remoluri, and in 2010, so right before this harvest, he's back and has been slowly making changes. But this is like the old school dad formula of Rioja, and it's a big transition from the Bosconia. This is a massive wine. It's already got the age. It's got tons of aging potential to it. Mostly Tempranillo, like 95% Tempranillo with a smidge of Graciano and Manzuelo. And then over 3 years in mixed French and American, mostly old barrels. What do we think of the clash of styles there?
Very polarizing, like opposite styles.
Yeah. And it's funny because they're still traditionalists.
Yeah.
But Lopez is so far beyond like traditional that you're like, oh, well, you can do that too.
Well, I can be honest with you, I lean toward this style, a bit more wild and Viognier touch to it.
Totally.
I do appreciate the flavors and the delivery, but to me it's more French oriented for some reason.
100%.
In that way,
Yeah.
but it's delicious one.
Yeah. I won't say no if they're being poured.
Exactly.
Okay, so our rinse is going to be the Reventos Blanc de Blanc. Now, there is a theme which I didn't really cover in this tasting, and I'll just mention it. In Spain, the younger generation is kind of upset with the older generation because they made all their money in the traditions making lots of wine. And it's the thing that's happening in Rioja. It's also happening in Cava. So Reventos, the full family name is Reventos Cordonneau, which we think of as the Cordonneau is Cava that we see stacked at the grocery store at the holidays, which is $3 a bottle. It's kind of hangover in a bottle, ready to go. But they are that side of the family makes the most Cava in the world. They're also the family that made Cava Cava. So they created the appellation. They created the need for this wine, and the great grandson's like, but there's champagne in the world. We can make better wine than the wine that we're making. And so he took some of the vineyards that he inherited, which are basically next door to the family's, and set up his own appellation. So to be in the appellation, you have to be biodynamically farmed. And there's a couple other things, but it's just like he wants super clean, small production wines coming from there. And we've seen a lot of producers leave Cava appellation. They've created the Corponat thing, and they've just kind of fled the bad brand of Cava because we associate Cava with inexpensive plonk, unfortunately. That's not what this wine is. This wine is kick-ass Macabeo, Parellada, Chirello, limestone soils, biodynamically grown, all sorts of cool like little fossils in the soils. I mean, it's what we think of like the super cool vineyard sites that we bring in our direct imports, and it's champagne and it's like $70 a bottle. We kind of have that from Spain. It's not direct import, and it's $22 a bottle. And minerality, acid, these wines kick ass. And we just need to remember that we can get awesome bubbles. Only aged 18 months on the lees. Kind of, you can see that in the style. All right, so we gotta end the tasting with the Iberia-ishness of it all. So the islands off of Africa are part of Iberia. So we are starting with something from the Açores, and my Portuguese is just awful, so I apologize for that. And I had a super killer photo of the vineyards there. All right, I gotta get that page printed up. It's mostly an indigenous grape called Arinto, but if you look at the vineyards there, it's a volcanic island off the coast of Morocco. So it's closer to Africa by like twice than it is to Portugal. But every vineyard is surrounded by these black volcanic rocks, and they make these little walls to protect it from the winds of the island. And it also protects them from the salt spray. So one of the interesting things that I learned, and that's why I love this job so much, we think of there being a saltiness, or I have always thought that there's a saltiness of the wines that come from close to the sea. But if there were actually salt on these grapes, the grapes would burn and wilt. So it cannot be actual like sea spray salt that contributes to it. So it's the soils. But like you think of Albarino from Riche Bayesh and there's that saltiness and you're like, it's gotta be the sea spray. It's not the sea spray. Like this is a place where it gets splashed on all the time. You can see these waves and everything but it's subtropical. It gets all this rain to wash off the salt. And if it wasn't the case, there would be no wine.
Saline minerality. It's not salt, it's a
It's,
saline. You know,
yes,
it's different, right?
but I mean, I always translate it as kind of saltiness.
Yeah.
That it's the easiest thing to say, but we need to change. Well, I need to change. You guys are probably doing it right. I'm doing it wrong. Yeah, so I thought it would be fun to include that because we don't get to taste the island wines.
Those are great ones.
Didn't Tim blind us with this?
Was it that one?
I think he did.
It was the one.
Yeah,
This one?
and it was a hit. No one got it,
No,
of
you got it, of
course,
course,
but yeah.
How
You
would
mean you don't have a sense memory for
Yeah,
Orinto?
Kind of professional. Get out of here.
So the next two wines I'm super jazzed about because I'm weird this way and we're tasting some the Spanish part of the islands. This is Tenerife. The grape is Gual. But what it really is Bual. what it really is Malvasia.
Okay, now we're talking.
But this is the same grape that is grown on Madeira, and it goes to make Bual Madeira wines. The grape was transported over to the island a long time ago. Vinatigo, the winemaker there, is the professor of viticulture and enology on the island, and it's his like work into studying of the plants. Whatever. People who can talk better than me. He was doing these studies. He brought this grape back to a production level on the island. And I just love the volcanic island, and I love that we now are gonna have a base point to then compare a wine that has been fortified and then essentially cooked in the same way that bourbon is cooked in the rack warehouse. So they ferment for like 10 hours. They just get a modest amount of natural alcohol going in. They dump in like 95% pure alcohol, and with port it's usually about 70% alcohol. They add brandy where this is alcohol, and like we don't want the booze that we're adding to contribute to the flavor of this wine. It then gets put into 500-liter barrels, and the first 3 years of its life are spent on like the third floor of a subtropical warehouse cooking. So this is where the bourbon thing comes in. It's in a super hot warehouse cooking. And then after 3 years, the barrels are brought down to the next level, and it spends a bunch of time there. That's the style. It's the Cantiero style. Sorry, LA. There's an extra treat here for everybody in Redwood City.
You didn't have to tell them.
I have to. But it's delicious. That's the tasting. But I mean, I couldn't help myself. But sweet cheese and Madeira, kind of awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. If anybody has questions, I'm always available via email. I have more notes than anybody needs to go. Thanks, guys.